everybody. Assalamu alaikum. I hope you're having a wonderful day. Make sure that you hit the subscribe button and the notify button so you'll know when you're getting new episodes. And we just want to grow this project. I thank you in advance. Without further ado, let's get it rolling. The ShOUT Show.
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, family. I'm Preacher Moss, host of the SOS, the ShOUT Show. I hope you're having a tremendous day, a tremendous Tuesday, if you will. Few things for those who are coming to the show for the first time, just a couple of suggestions and a request, if you will. If you're watching on YouTube, click the subscribe button and click the like button so we can let you know when the new episodes are coming up on the ShOUT Show. And if you're coming to the show and you've been a long time SOS family member, a long time SOS holder, you know the rules. Just make sure that everybody here comes with an open mind. SOS family, you know I appreciate you, I love you, and I can't do without your support. That's number one. Number two is, brothers and sisters, I think this topic has been long coming. I sat and listened to politicians last night, something I normally don't do because I don't like to listen to liars. People who promise me things and never can't give. That is the avocation, that's the provocation of the devil. The devil promises you everything and gives you nothing. Let me say that again. The devil promises you everything and gives you nothing, and you have no defense for that because the devil tells you, I'm not going to give you anything, but as long as you're listening, I'm going to engage you. I'm going to tell you what you want to hear so that you continue to listen to the point that you are addicted to what I have to say. And the issue right now of politics is that politics is addictive. No one wants to say it, but I'll say it. Let me give some shout outs. Shout out soldiers, Sister Reed. And you know we can't have a show all the way from UK. Sister Rabina staying up late. You know we appreciate you. But the scope of politics is that it has become addictive. And the aspects of addiction are power, lying, and oppression. Power, lying, and oppression. I can't trust what politicians say or what comes out of their mouth because we are not given to their true intentions. It is shrouded in what I like to say, baby language, childish, infantile babbling, if you will. And because of that, we find ourselves in a world of hurt. Not only in the United States, but leaders around the country have engaged in this type of mumbo jumbo that continues to plague us. And I say plague us, when I say plague, I'm going to categorize people. I'm going to say people with rational minds, people with rational thoughts, people who wake up in the morning and realize 1 + 1 = 2, and there's a good chance that when I go to sleep that 1 + 1 = 2. This is the episode, people, where we talk about getting back to grown folk conversation. I cannot watch politicians who do not understand the importance of being a part of grown folk conversation. Now, let me tell you something about grown folk. I didn't say growing folk, grown folk conversation, grown folk talk. See, that's something that comes out of the African American community. We call it grown folk talking. When you hear grown folk talking, you're a child and you haven't achieved the level of grown folk, then you shut up. We have too many people here talking, and I'm going to talk about where it comes from, but we have too many people here talking. We have too many people who have never in their life been a part of grown folk conversation, now injecting themselves and calling themselves leaders and calling themselves advisors. Some of them are spiritual advisors, but all of them have one thing in common. They're liars to the core. They're liars to the people that they're talking to. They're liars to the people that they think they represent. They are liars in and of themselves. Let me give you the scope of grown talk. How I learned grown talk conversation. I was a child, like many of you. If you're watching this show, you were a child at one point in time. Here's the scope of understanding grown folk talk. I was going down the street with my grandfather, Clifford Moss Sr. Somebody walked up and said, "Hey, Moss, how you doing? Hey, Moss, how you doing?" He said, "I'm doing well." They looked at me and said, "Hey, little Moss, how you doing?" I didn't open my mouth. I looked at my grandfather. I looked at him. He said, "Go and tell him how you doing." I said, "I'm doing good." And I shut up. And they had grown folk conversation. See, grown folk conversation carries leverage in terms of accountability, responsibility. Here's the reason why you don't listen to children. All you parents out there that are trying to be your parent, your children's best friend, you don't listen to children because their words are weighted differently. The words are weighted on aspirations, hope, inspiration, but not really tied into reality. Hence, Mom and Dad, I want to go to Harvard. That is an inspiration, but can you pay for it? Mom and Dad, I want to go to Oxford. That's wonderful, but can you pay for it? I want a new car. Oh, we all want a new car, but can you pay for it? Grown folk talk tell you what? No. And I'm going to tell you something else here. Okay, there you go. My name is grown folk. Okay, I'm going to tell you something else, Sister Rabina. I am, I'll put it out there. I'm 53 years old. 53 years old. I've been in the company of people who are 80, 75, and 80 years old. The experience that I told you with my grandfather, when I'm with 80 and 70-year-old people, I'm still that child. Because whatever I have to say out of their mouth, unless they ask for it, it has no value. I can't sit up here and tell you, brothers and sisters, that I have more knowledge of somebody who's 80 or 81 years old. I have delusions of thinking my thoughts are pertinent and relevant to them. The spans of history lets you know that you're not in that space. Thus, the deference that I'm talking to is respect. The reason I'm talking about grown folk conversation is because we got out of the space of respect. I've seen people who may have been grown folks, but they found themselves children in the midst of people who are children, grown folks who are children. Therefore, we keep getting or revisiting this whole thing over and over and over. I saw something that amazed me, brothers and sisters. Let me give a shout out. What's going on? Good to see you, man. We got to catch up. But let me tell y'all something about grown folk conversation. You see, grown folk conversation, when you're really, really, really talking about it, is sober thought, sober language. In the words of my teacher, Imam Warthi Muhammad, it is sober language that cuts through all the intoxication that you're hearing. Sober language. We miss grown folk talk right now because everybody's intoxicated. I say that again, not everybody, but enough people to make this real, or make this fact real. People are intoxicated. Our children are intoxicated. Our leaders are intoxicated because we bought into a system that allows us to dream like the child. I want to be an astronaut. Be an astronaut, son, but you got to go to school and you got to study physics and you got to study engineering. That's grown folk talk. I want to be a lawyer. Great, son, but you're going to have to go get a BA and then you have to go to law school. See, that's the reality of grown folk talk. I'm not even talking about, that's great, son. Thank you for letting me know, but I need to go out and make this money to pay for your dreams. Grown folk conversation has been lost because people are afraid too much about what other folks are going to say about them. You know, I had an uncle, my Uncle Earl, God bless his soul. He's been gone a long time, since 2003. Everybody said this about my Uncle Earl, that he was raw. He was raw. If he didn't like you or you brought some BS to the conversation, He didn't redirect you. He had no filter. He tell you, you full of X, Y, and Z, and then he tell you why you full of X, Y, and Z, and he will call you into account for what you said. And all of us, particularly the children, lived in fear of my Uncle Earl until we became older. And he respected our conversation. And I understood where he was coming from a man who talked about driving trucks, multiple jobs, driving across on the road, trucking. You know, he was a baseball manager. He managed a film, a movie theater, a music actor, put food on the table. There was nothing I could tell this man about putting food on the table. I would never go around and go, you know, I don't like this job because he treat me. How are you going to talk about the job you don't like? This guy's doing 4 jobs he didn't like at all. That's grown folk talk, grown folk conversation. And as you begin to look at it more and more, our elders, brothers and sisters, in this whole COVID thing, you know who they don't interview on television? Our elders. The grown of the most grown of the most grown, we don't talk to them. We put the doctors on. We put Dr. Fauci on. We put the other lady on. Trump will get on. That little black Inspector General. I don't know, attorney. I don't know what he is. I can't even. And he gets up and talk. But no one speaks with the space and the gravitas of grown folks. I'm going to give you an example. I saw an interview with KRS-One and Nick Cannon. And KRS-One made an incredible observation, and he shared it. He talked about, everybody talk about social justice and how bad racism is, and da-da-da-da. If you can find a copy of him, the Encyclopedia of Negro History, he talked about a woman who lived a majority of her life through slavery, and they recorded her life. They recorded her life, and what they found from recording her life was that slavery was not this black and white of master slave. It was a much more complicated, much more complicated relationship, because you had slaves, but they weren't dumb, and they weren't stupid, and they understand the aspect of freedom, and they were skilled. Slaves didn't come here to stay slaves. And in that lady's writing, if you will, her recounting, she reminded us that if you weren't a slave back then, shut the hell up. You can't talk about slavery. You could speak it from a book, but you can't talk about slavery. And it's in that aspect, brothers and sisters, that people are talking out of a book. They don't know. Grown folk people and grown folk conversation comes out of people who've been through something. So all my social justice warriors, I love you. I love you. But if you ain't watched Fannie Lou Hamer give a speech, if you didn't talk to or understand the importance of Medgar Evers, you don't know who Dr. Vernon Johns is, then maybe you should shut up. Black lives matter, yes. But black intelligence and black grown folks conversation must survive for you to even be able to do what you're wanting to do. And the problem with grown folk conversation for a lot of us, we don't have it with the right people. Let me say that again. The problem with grown folk conversation is we don't have it with the right people. What's going on, Brother Jeremiah? What I mean is, we're not developing collectives of people who understand the importance and the vitality of sober language. Now, I might upset some people, but I'm talking across the board. In our churches, in our synagogues, in our masjids, we have gotten away from sober language. Sober language that's in all of our religious books. But we've become too highfalutin about trying to interpret these religious books to fit today. The problem is, you can't fit today in those religious books. Those religious books are the truth. They give you a guideline. If you're trying to fit today in the religious books, it won't work. It's a recipe for mayhem. This is a guide for you to navigate today. But a lot of people don't understand that. Very true. Very true, Sister Rabina. Very true. I had a conversation one time with a comedian who many of you may not know. Mr. Noise probably knows him. It's a comedian named Nipsey Russell. Nipsey Russell, who was an amazing comedian, but he was an old school vaudeville comedian. You know, he performed with Mantan Moreland. I could keep going with these names. A lot of you are not going to know. But let me say this. There was a time for black comedians, for all you black comedians that hoof and holler and da-da-da. There was a time for black comedians where the pioneers couldn't even talk to a white audience. Peep this grown folk conversation. They couldn't talk to a white audience. The white audience would watch and observe them, and they would talk to one another. And the audience would be like peeking in on that conversation. Let me tell y'all this, where this comes from. That comes from the slave field. Woo! That comes from the slave field. Some of y'all can preach what you said. It was intelligence. That black folks, slaves, were having grown folk conversation about life, living, and survival in front of a slave master, in front of a man, owner, and they were successful. And it was the pedagogy of slang as you hear today. Slang, swagger. You know, they spoke in codes. That's what we're talking about with rap and all those type of things. The music had a certain tonality to it to let you know maybe we're running away tonight. Hey, girl, I miss you. Hey, so-and-so is sick. There was a tonality to it. It was a spiritual layer to it. And that grown folk music and that grown folk conversation is missing. You can't even find it in music anymore. I stumbled upon an old copy of Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes. Woo! Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes. With Teddy Pendergrass singing, "Wake Up Everybody." Wake up everybody. Grown folk music. If you get a chance, Sister Rabina, Brother Jeremy, Mr. Noise, go listen to the lyrics of "Wake Up Everybody." And remember sober language in music. Because they talked about the same things we're going through now, but there was a vibe where it was accessible and we could have a conversation about it. You know, they just tried to redo Public Enemy's "Fight the Power." And I commend them. They had Chuck D and Black Thought and Nas and a couple other people. But I'm going to say something. It wasn't like the first. It wasn't raw like the first. It didn't have that sense of urgency like the first. Hell, I don't even think it had a release date when it first came out. "Fight the Power" was 1989. That was the song. And we're not having those conversations now. We lie to one another because grown folk conversation was the thing that kept our children in check. What do I mean by keeping our children in check? I mean, they framed social behavior. Social behavior, it wasn't being strict. It wasn't being overtaught with your children. It was producing children that understood there were conditions out in the world that could harm their futures, that could harm them physically. Hell, it could harm your future. And we don't have those conversations. I'm going to tell y'all something. Got a lot of stuff going out here. And, you know, I hear people, just let it go. He's so. Hell no, I ain't letting it go. I went through a whole lifetime, a grown folk conversation, getting checked from point A to point B. And I'm not bitter. I'm thankful. The only reason I'm saying this because you got to return to it. You can't have kids in church and in masjid playing video games. When a man is on the minbar or he's in the pulpit, he's doing work that we have to pay attention to, work that we're privy to hear. Let me tell y'all something. This is when I knew there was a problem with grown folk conversation. A good friend of mine, good friend of mine, got a girl pregnant. We were like 16. He got a girl pregnant. And the girl's mother and father looked at him and said, well, we'll work it out. They said, we'll work it out. There was no anger. There was no sense of what the hell y'all doing? We work it out. I'm sitting in the back like, wait a minute. Now, I'm not saying that kids back in the day weren't sexually experimenting back in the day, but everybody here knows back in the day, what'd your mama tell you when you went to college? What'd your mama tell you when you went out to hang with your friends? What'd she tell you? Don't you bring me no babies. Remember that? Don't you bring me no babies. Only time mom and daddy want to hear about bringing the babies when you went through a process. That process is what? The grown folks process. You got married, you worked, you had your baby. It was in a protection of the idea of family with the idea of what? Marriage. No, I'm not even being mean-spirited about this, folks. I'm trying to remind you, like I'm trying to remind myself, that there was a time when things mattered. When people lied, grown folks in the room stood up and said, I can't accept that. I'm going to tell y'all one of the most beautiful things I really appreciated when I first became Muslim. I was at Juma someplace. And we're up there about to pray. And I don't know, the brother might have been nervous. I don't know. Arabic is a tricky thing too, okay? Arabic is a tricky thing. But the brother got up to lead the Juma prayer. And he started reciting Quran. And he missed something. Like he said something wrong. He missed something. And 3 or 4 brothers behind him corrected him. They didn't scold him. They corrected him. They didn't correct him. They corrected what he was saying because they wanted to be correct. Because we want you, the leader, lead us correctly. And they said, no, jump out like, hey, you got it wrong. It was real easy. And they told him, and you know what the best part about it was? I remember that. Because even though he was the imam, he wasn't above being corrected. One of the features of grown folk conversation, Mr. Noise, you know this, is a safe space for us to be corrected about our behavior, our thoughts, and our actions. Where do you see that now? Where is the space for us to realistically correct incorrect behavior that's out there? We tie in the systems that we don't believe in. We tie in the systems that, without a doubt, to me, they oppress us. If you have a bad politician, whether it's White House, whether it's the Senate, you're stuck with that politician or that individual for their term. For their term. The guy at McDonald's who's on probation for the first 60 days, if he doesn't flip fries the right way, if he doesn't mop the floor the right way, if his uniform isn't correct, he's out of there in 6 months or 2 months, 60 days, 2 months. Why are we, brothers and sisters, why are we dealing with these situations? These people who we know are not qualified. These people we know have alternative motives for why they're quote unquote trying to lead us. We will sit around with a president who's going to run around for another 4 years. I'm going to tell y'all something. Somebody leading you to hell, are you going to stay on that track and let them lead you to hell because they have a term? No. Grown folk conversation is an innovation of people who, for lack of a better word, seek justice not only for themselves, but for the community around them. Let me give a shout out. Yeah, there you go, sister. The man, he took it. He said, Alhamdulillah. And Teddy Pendergrass was the voice for Wake Up Everybody. It's a good documentary out on him if you want to check him out. Tragic at the end, but then he rises up. He's victorious. But let me get to my point because I want to. I'm going to ask everybody in your own spaces. I'm going to ask everybody in your own spaces, please, with your family, with your children, with your neighbors, begin to engage, expand, and perfect grown folk conversation. Because when craziness is about, when madness runs amok, the people who institute this madness will run away from you if you have grown folk conversation. I say run away from you, not run around you, not run over you. They will run over you. And if you have, brothers and sisters, a collective of people who are willing to do that, then you will create a new situation, a new didactic, whereby we understand clearly that this thing that's in front of us is not real, is not beneficial, and is not truthful. So let me let you guys go on that one. I appreciate you. And as much as we can, brothers and sisters, wherever we are on this show, whenever I have a show, please, let's try and engage or base our conversation on grown folk talk. I'm Preacher Moss. This is your shout out show. You guys have been amazing as always. I appreciate you and God bless you. Have an incredible day or the rest of the day, wherever you are. Understand blessings have no time limits. They have no term limits. They don't come from me. They come from above. Stay blessed and I'll see you tomorrow, inshallah.
Hey everybody, this is your brother Preacher Moss. Listen, I hope that you enjoyed your shout out show experience. We'll be back with the next show, the next shout out show. Simple ask before you go, please help your brother out. Click that subscribe button, click that notify button, and I'll see you again on this side of the microphone. You probably wonder what that smell is. That's me. I smell good. And the reason I smell good is because I use oils from Tarifa Tar. So I'm not saying you can't smell good. I'm not even saying you stink. I'm saying you have the opportunity to smell exquisite. Check out tarifatar.com for some of the best oils and scents in town.